Good morning. So we will go ahead and start our celebration today. So welcome to the 2021 Ethics in Action Honors Celebration. On behalf of everyone at Foundations Health and Wholeness, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Ryan Good, the President and CEO of Foundations. 2020 and 2021 have challenged us in so many ways, keeping safe and healthy, taking care of our emotional health, and tending to our family, friends, and coworkers. I'm so glad you could be with us today. For the next hour and a half, I invite you to let everything go outside of this room and just be present. In fact, let's take a collective deep breath and just give away the worries of the outside world and the busyness of our minds and lives. There are so many people and organizations that make this event possible. Sponsorships are more than money. They represent kids and adults who have the ability to heal mind and spirit. They represent lives changed. George Kress, the founder of Green Bay Packaging, started Foundations in 1965, and he made mental health available for everyone. The George Kress Foundation continues to be our founding sponsor of this event, and I'd like to personally thank Michelle, the George Kress Foundation, and all of Green Bay Packaging team. And thank you for just caring for the mental wellness of our neighbors. With our renewed focus on celebrating people who create healthier workplaces, schools, and neighborhoods, our Ethics in Action programming focuses on the building blocks of ethics. We are so grateful for Dr. Benjamin Chan, a philosophy and ethics professor at St. Norbert College, for leading the independent research and selection team. Earlier this week, we announced this year's 5 recipients and highlighted their work with video presentations on social media. You may have interacted with the recipients and their stories during breakfast today. There will be time after the event to do that as well. At this point, please turn your attention to the screens for a video compilation of this year's Ethie Award recipients and their inspiring work.
I noticed, as I was going into college, that there wasn't an organization for Indigenous students. I noticed that there was one for Latinx students and Black students, but there wasn't one for Native Americans. And I've always had that community growing up, especially in high school. Even if it was informally, I always had that little group that I could always go back to. So I kind of wanted to have that same thing in my college experience too.
So Ruthie came in and she created the Council of Indigenous People to give our Native American students a place, a community where they could kind of come together and share their experiences.
And so I worked with a Menominee elder to come and speak the Menominee language, and we had to get approval through the Menominee Nation to get the flag, and they put up a new flagpole and everything, and then we had a ceremony for it, and we had a drummer, and I was the first one to raise the flag, so it was super exciting.
In Casa Alba, I am a volunteer. What I do is I give advice about the health insurance for the Hispanic community. So when the seniors come to look for advice and see what they qualify for and try to help them, guide them, most of them don't know any other language, they are just Spanish. And once they retire, after many years, then they are just at home.
Her mother, Luz Marie, a lot of people called her Lucy, is someone that I had the privilege of knowing, and because of her great love for her mother, it captures a special place in her heart, and that's why she has such a love for seniors, and she's able to bring out the best in them.
The Hispanic seniors immigrating to this country, not knowing the language, many of them undocumented for many years, and still the ethics that they have at work. You know, didn't matter the weather, didn't matter they didn't speak the language, didn't matter, they gave it all, you know, and it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
My gift that I have been given is a connector. I love to connect people. And so we want to do something. We want to create action. All right. I feel like I'm in a space and place to be able to help that move along. And so they created the Black Action Committee, and these are the things that we want to work on: recruitment, retention.
Last year, Ingrid was incredibly helpful to me. I was in a position where I was afraid to take those bigger risks and make sure we were having the courageous conversations, and she's amazing about helping you have those conversations with students, with each other, and really making sure that the things that need to be talked about in school are.
I think it's more important now than probably ever in the history of our country that police officers are held accountable, that what they do is transparent, that what they do is done right, and when they do something wrong, that they get held accountable. And in Green Bay, the person that is ensuring all those things happen is Captain John Balsa.
If something happens clear across the country, it will affect how citizens view their local police department. And obviously, if something happens at their local police department, you can lose the community shortly. What drives me is to make sure that the Green Bay Police Department, at least, is never that department, that we're not going to disappoint our communities, we're not going to betray our communities. And what we're doing at our department are what the community wants us to do, and that we are trustworthy in carrying out our duties.
The Cassandra Voss Center is an academic center at St. Norbert College, which is really focused on issues of identity and power, and focused on creating space for people to have meaningful conversations about those issues.
I nominated Billy for this award because he and the CVC team just really came together and found a way for all of us to find our own ways to address the racial injustice that kind of saw a spike after the murder of George Floyd in 2020.
In this context, what we're really talking about is having a spirit of joy with this work, knowing that actually learning can be transformative, and that should be an incredibly fulfilling experience. And so I would say for anyone in the community, whether you're affiliated with a school or business, or just you as an individual, are eager to learn more about issues of race and gender and identity, and feel like I don't know where to begin, my hope would be that the Cassandra Voss Center would be one place.
Just amazing, inspiring stories. And so at this time, we'd like to give out our Effie Awards to these individuals. So I'm excited to announce that, the 5 inspiring people here in Brown County are receiving Effies for their impactful work creating healthier neighborhoods, workplaces, and schools. These 5 people act with integrity. They illuminate issues that challenge the status quo, and they inspire others. So as I read your name, if you'd come up and receive your Effie, and this is Dr. Ben Chan, for those of you who haven't met him yet. All right, so the first Effie is Captain John Balsa for relentlessly pursuing the truth and keeping the integrity of the Green Bay Police Department through his work leading the Professional Standards Division. So congratulations. Thank you. Next is Dr. Billy Karinko for developing and leading anti-racist work at the Cassandra Voss Center. Next is Elizabeth Kastichka for helping Spanish-speaking older adults lead more fulfilling lives through a support group for elders at the Casa Alba Melanie Hispanic Community Resource Center. Ingrid Parker Hill for fostering an equitable foundation in the Green Bay Area Public School District by creating the 3 Eyes initiative to increase students' optimistic cultural identity. Congratulations. And Ruthie Tucker for addressing gaps in the ways that Native American scholars were being supported at St. Norbert College, as well as how college honors the indigenous land on which it stands for the creating the Council of Indigenous People. And thank you for all that you do in our community to put ethics into action and inspiring us to do the work that creates healthy neighborhoods, schools, and workplaces. So thanks. All right, and at this time, I would like to take time to thank our presenting and speaker sponsors. They make this special time together a reality. And they care so much about issues of ethics and mental health. Associated Bank is our presenting sponsor, so thank you. And there are 2 anonymous families here today that made our keynote speaker possible today. So thank you all for your generosity. At this time, I would like to invite our clinical director up to the stage. This is Julie Feld. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and she has been working in this mental health field her entire career. So I'd love to turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. I want to thank everyone for coming today. It was an early morning for a lot of you, maybe. So thank you for coming and being part of this. Like Ryan said, my name is Julie Feld, and I'm the clinical director at Foundations. I've been with Foundations for about 6.5 years, but I've been in the mental health field for 40 years. I don't even like to say that. I choke on it. So, and I only bring that up because as I get to the point of later on in my career, I start reflecting on things, and a organization like this, people like this that come together really make me reflect on what matters, which then brings me to a story that I'd like to tell you that kind of fits with what we're doing today. So if you bear with me, I'll tell you a little story about myself. And what happened about 20 years ago, I had had the opportunity to go with my father and my sister to a dude ranch out in the mountains of Montana. And, I'd ridden as a child and thought I knew how to ride a horse. But the first day they introduce you to your horse, and then they tell you kind of how you're going to steer the horse and ride the horse, right? And if you've ever ridden a horse, most of us have ridden a horse using what we call neck reining. So it's one-handed, kind of like an automatic transmission on a car. But they did it differently. They wanted us to do what's called plow reining, so I use both hands. It's new to me, and so it's within the first probably half hour that I'm there, and I'm up on my horse, and the cowboy, little 20-year-old punk cowboy, is telling me how to ride a horse, okay, and so he's saying that we get to the backing up of the horse, and he says that I need to use both my hands and just use my wrist, just a slight wrist, touch of the wrist, go back. So I'm on my horse. Her name was Apache, and I'm on my horse, and I'm practicing, and all of a sudden it got really quiet in the arena. And, you get the feeling that everybody's looking at you, right? And so I look at the cowboy, and he's kind of piercing eyes are coming at me. And I'm like, what? And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm practicing. He said, what are you telling the horse? I said, well, nothing. Nothing. And by then I'm kind of getting it. I'm like, ooh, that wasn't good. And he said, if there's one thing that you need to know is that everything you do matters. And it was one of those statements, obviously, that has stuck with me a long time. Everything I do matters. It matters what I do to that horse at all times, was his point. That anything that I do when I'm on that horse or around that horse matters to the horse. So obviously I've taken that a little bit further, right? Everything we do matters. Everything you do to yourself matters. It matters to your heart, your soul, your spirit, right? Everything we do to our family and friends matters. And everything we do to our community matters. And that's why we're here today, because what you do in the community matters, and it matters to us at Foundations. So thank you for considering giving to Foundations today. I want you to consider this. So if everybody here gave $165, and I know not everybody can, but if everybody did, we could provide 370 sessions to children and adults. If everybody, and then J.J. Keller Foundation has offered to match anything that's given today. So if they match that 370 sessions, now here's where I'm not good at math, but I think it comes out to 740 sessions that would be able to be provided. So that would be a lot of sessions. So thank you for considering to give today. These contributions today will help us live out George Cress's legacy and will keep Foundations around for a long time. So, enough of the sales pitch. What I want to do now is introduce our speaker. And I have to get my glasses for this. In some ways, it's been a challenging year coming off of 2020. We're still kind of in flux, so we wanted to give a gift back to you today for all your support of Foundations. Our gift is our speaker, Mike Veny. Mike has managed to overcome a lifetime of mental health challenges to become a professional drummer and one of America's leading mental health speakers. Here's the list of things. He's a certified corporate wellness specialist, the author of a best-selling book called Transforming Stigma, How to Become a Mental Health Superhero, and I believe that book will be available after his presentation today. He's the co-host of a new podcast, so I haven't checked this out yet, but I'm going to, and I encourage you to, too. It's called Better Mental, that focuses on the hard truths of removing mental health and disability stigma in the workplace. Mike is recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in the healthcare industry. He has a mission to help communities heal emotional pain and discover meaning through simple ideas that empower wellness and healthy relationships. Mike is a world-class keynote speaker who delivers unforgettable presentations to Fortune 500 companies, which we're not one of those, but Mike comes from New York City, and it says this here. I have a hard time believing this. He's a self-described as not really a football fan, I don't know, but maybe he'll change his mind after today. So welcome, Mike. I don't even know where he is. There he is.
Okay, it works. You know, for the past 18 months, people throughout the world have experienced anger, grief, and fear at an unprecedented level. Of people who contracted the COVID-19 coronavirus, 1/3 of them developed mental health challenges, either as a result of what the virus did to their body, the trauma of the whole experience, or some combination of the two. Mental health statistics around the world are on the rise. We've got a real problem on our hands. My name is Mike Veny. I'm a certified corporate wellness specialist, and today I'm going to show you how to transform the stigma surrounding mental health. And this is so important because we're talking about it more than ever before, yet people still aren't getting the help that they so desperately need. Many of you in this room right now are struggling, and I promise you, if you listen to what I have to say today, you're going to be able to help yourself or someone that you love who might be struggling. A few things about this learning experience. This is informed by psychological research. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just Mike, and as you're going to learn, I have a lot of issues. And if you are triggered by something that I say, I encourage you to talk to a therapist, call 911. I'm going to be talking about some very real stuff that needs to be talking about. Also, I have some learning objectives. We're going to talk about what keeps people from asking for help, how to really go about this thing called self-care that we talk about all the time, how to have the conversation. It's an awkward conversation to have, but how do you do it? And how to connect with others who are struggling. But I want to give you a disclaimer before I give this presentation. I've been a professional speaker for 11 years, and I've done like 3-hour presentations where I had to speak by myself on stage. And it wasn't only until about a month ago that I started using PowerPoint slides. And to be really honest with you, last night, like around 11 o'clock at night, I sent Jen an email with these PowerPoint slides. So I'm not really sure what you're about to get right now. I'm just going to ask in advance for your forgiveness for what you're about to see. So let's go to the next slide here. Oh. That's a hamster with dumbbells. You know, I put up that slide because it reminds me of my hamster. He's dead. He's been dead for like 10 years. But I think of him often. And he was a dwarf hamster, a little 2 to 3 inch long hamster. He was my friend. I tried to pet him once, but he tried to bite me. Kept my distance, but he had a good energy otherwise. One day he had something in his eye. He was winking like this. And I didn't know what was going on with my hamster. So I took him to the veterinarian. First trip to a veterinarian ever. They're expensive, by the way. They gave him a physical, which included weighing him in a foam cereal bowl and charging me $100, but whatever. We needed to get him help for what was going on with his eye. So the veterinarian comes in, puts on rubber gloves, and holds my little hamster. And my little hamster bites the veterinarian. I'm thinking my hamster's pretty cool. Then he goes out the room and gets a nurse. So now we have 2 grown adults in the room trying to restrain my little 2-inch hamster. My little hamster bites her. She leaves the room. She was actually in the hallway talking smack about my hamster. How she's not going to go back in that room with that hamster. Finally, they got 3 grown adults to come in the room and restrain my hamster. And at that point, I took a picture. That's my hamster right there. You know, when I see that picture, I have a hard time with it because when I see my hamster getting restrained like that, it reminds me of being in the mental hospital. And I've been there way too many times. And wherever I travel in the world, I have to locate the nearest psychiatric hospital just in case something happens. I've been battling with mental health challenges my whole life, and it's made it really difficult. To describe what I go through, the only way to talk about it is by something I love deeply in this world, food. If you want to be my friend, you got to like food. And I want you to picture an oven, not a regular kitchen oven, but an industrial strength Viking restaurant oven with 4 burners. On the top right burner, simmering in a frying pan, is my anxiety. I don't know how I'm coming off to you right now, but I'm feeling the anxiety in my chest. It's really hard to do this up here. Right here on the lower right burner is my obsessive compulsive disorder. I mean, I'm trying to give a presentation, and I'm obsessing about so many things, it's really making it hard. And right over here on the top left burner is my anger and depression. But on the lower left burner, there's a stock pot. And I can take the ingredients from each frying pan, put it into the stock pot, close the lid, and turn up the heat. That's a problem waiting to happen in the kitchen. But the kitchen's kind of cool in some other ways. There's a curved mirror right there and a slanted one right there because everywhere I look, everything is about me and it's distorted. And truthfully, it protects me from all of you. The kitchen I'm talking about is not in my home. It's in my head. I've been in this kitchen my whole life, and it's made it difficult to make friends, to connect with people. It's made dating difficult. It's made work difficult. And it all started when I was younger. I grew up in a wonderful home, and my mom loved me. She was my biggest fan. She passed away about 5 years ago. She was my biggest supporter. And my dad, he loved me too. And we took this picture 2 weeks ago, and I just wanted to show it to you. By the way, I totally almost photoshopped my face onto that last night, but I was like, no, don't do that. That's my dad. And, you know, I had a really good childhood growing up, a younger brother, Jason. But it was somewhere around first grade where I was starting to have temper tantrums all the time, and I was always crying and getting upset. And I found that I was getting myself in trouble all the time. I was constantly getting yelled at for my behavior. I was constantly getting in trouble. And so at the end of first grade, my parents needed to do something about my behavior. They decided to put me in this place called Catholic school. You know this isn't going to go good, right? Well, they had good intentions. They had very good intentions. And they put me in Catholic school. And, you know, second grade went good. Third grade went good. But we've all had that experience in school of having that one teacher that no one wanted to get as a teacher in school. There was that one teacher who had a reputation of, I don't know, being mean or an alien or something like that. And my teacher, her name was Sister Pat, my 4th grade teacher. She was the evil teacher in school. And I knew from day one she and I were not going to finish the school year together. Nope, wasn't going to work. So this is how I remember it. I'm in 4th grade. Picture me in 4th grade, and I'm sitting in the back of the classroom, and Sister Pat tells me to wipe the smile off my face, because I guess that's not appropriate in Catholic school. So I said the thing you're not supposed to say to your 4th grade teacher. I said no. Now, you know how this goes down. Everybody goes, ooh. So Sister Pat then started yelling at me, and I said some things back to her that I'm not going to repeat right now. She then tried to grab me by my arm and pull me out of my desk, and I punched my teacher as hard as I could. She then took holy water and threw it on me and called me the devil. I took the holy water and threw it back at her and said, put this on your wrinkles. I was expelled from school that day, and my parents had a very serious talk about respect with me that night, a very serious talk. They said, you cannot just act like that, and I told them, nobody has a right to talk down to me. And I'm 42 years old. Nobody has a right to talk down to me. I don't punch people anymore. But needless to say, I'm expelled in the beginning of 4th grade. Well, they needed to find another solution, so they found a public school where my uncle was the principal. They thought it'd be good for his career and good for me. Long story short, after 3 weeks, several fights, and a desk mysteriously flying out of my hands in the direction of my teacher, I was expelled from that school. But I got to tell you, the rest of 4th grade, best school year ever. I got to stay home every day. That's back in a time when it was okay to stay home. We're done with that now, right? But I got to stay home every day. This tutor would come to the house. The woman was so scared of me, she wouldn't make eye contact with me. The summer between 4th and 5th grade, my parents took me to see the movie Batman. And I want to qualify this movie because I take my superheroes very seriously. This was Batman, not starring Ben Affleck, George Clooney. It was Michael Keaton starring as Batman, and Jack Nicholson was the Joker. I love this movie, and for those of you that are following this, Michael Keaton is coming back as Batman in the Flash movie, and I'm super excited for that. I loved this movie so much, and my parents told me that if I behaved, I could be Batman or the Joker for Halloween. I don't know if it was the movie or something else, but I came home and I got angry at a level that I never had before. I went into a rage. I was intensely angry for hours. I was punching things in my parents' home. I was destroying things, and I couldn't stop. Nothing could stop me. And the next thing I know, I'm put in a mental hospital. And I just want to tell you that it's a scary place, especially when you're a kid. And they tried to give me the whole story of like, it's going to be okay, everyone has mental health problems sometimes, but I knew where I was. I was in a mental hospital. And it didn't help that right across the street was the county jail, where I knew the people in the jail had the same rights as me. What am I supposed to think of myself? But I quickly got myself out of there. I learned the secret to getting out of the mental hospital. There's a secret. I probably shouldn't tell you this in case you ever get in. There's a secret to get yourself out of there fast. You simply have to convince them you have coping skills. And when you do, they let you out. And that's what I did. Never going to go back there again. In 5th grade, I was put in special education. Probably had the one teacher in school that I never messed with. This woman's about 5 feet tall. I saw her recently. I still keep my distance. She scares me for some reason. But I would tap on my desk and play drum beats. I would love to do that because it just made me feel good and it would annoy her. And eventually they let me go into the drum class. Holding drumsticks for the very first time was the greatest feeling I ever felt in my life. I'll never forget it. This morning when I woke up in my hotel, I looked at my suitcase and saw my drumsticks and just smiled. It feels so good to play drums. But when I wasn't in the drum class, which is most of the time, I was starting to experience a sadness that I would later learn is called depression. My depression is physically painful. When I woke up this morning, my body was in physical pain because of depression. And oftentimes when we're struggling with mental health, we just want a solution. We just want the pain to go away. Whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression or something else, we just want it to go away. So I had a solution. On September 29th, 1989, I came home from school at age 10. And I went into the medicine cabinet and I found my mental health medication. And I opened an entire bottle of pills and swallowed a bottle of pills and ended up passing out on the floor and almost dying by suicide at age 10. My mom found me and rushed me to the hospital and saved my life. And I'm grateful that she did that. I wouldn't be talking to you today, but I want to be honest with you. I was pissed off at her because I just wanted the pain to go away and I couldn't understand why she was getting in the way of it. Fast forward to 7th grade, I'm a lot bigger and I'm a lot stronger and I'm going down more rabbit holes. I'm going into more rages at home. And I want to be honest with you, when you're in 7th grade and you're going into a rage at home, that's not really a rage anymore. That's called violence. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but I want to be transparent with you about what happened. I was also doing this thing called self-harm. And self-harm is a problem we often think of with youth, but let's be real. Self-harm is a challenge with many of you in this room. There are 3 reasons why people self-harm. 1, we do it to take away the pain. 2, it can actually become an addiction. And number 3, certain people think it's cool. Either way, if you are self-harming, I encourage you to talk to someone about it. And as you're going to see momentarily, there are other ways to deal with the challenges you might be struggling with. So I'm self-harming, violent at home. Next thing I know, I'm put back in the mental hospital, this time for 6 months. They were not buying my coping skills story. Nope. But eventually, I got weekend passes. And I got to go home with my family. And on the weekends, my family, they wanted to do family activities, like go out to eat and stuff. I didn't want to do none of that. So I would lock myself in my bedroom and play drums to Red Hot Chili Peppers and LL Cool J. That was 7th grade. Between 7th grade and 10th grade, I'm proud to say that I was on a first-name basis with the local police. I knew their first names and favorite sports teams. I was constantly in crisis. And by the time I had finished 10th grade, I had been expelled from 3 schools, hospitalized in a mental hospital 3 times, several suicide attempts, lots of self-harm, violent at home, and on about 5 different mental health medications. All the while, my younger brother, Jason, is doing just fine. Everyone loves Jason. Jason has friends. My parents were worried. No school wanted me. The summer between 10th and 11th grade changed my life, and I want you to hear very carefully what happened that summer. That summer, my mom approached me. I want to say something about moms because I know we have a lot of moms in this room. Moms, in my opinion, are the hardest working people on the planet, the most dedicated people on the planet. In my company that I own, we've got several moms on the team. They get stuff done like nobody's business. But let's be honest. But let's be honest, moms are the sneakiest people on the planet too. Even when you're an adult. They do this thing called giving you the mommy look, where they look at you and they're saying one thing, but you know they're plotting something else. And they do these things called mommy tricks behind your back, where they band together like ninjas and do stuff. So my mom approached me with the mommy look. I knew she was up to something. She said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I took a step away. "What's your question?" She asked me, "What would make you happy?" I knew this was a mommy trick. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Just answer the question." So I thought about it and realized the only thing that would make me happy is playing the drums. So I told her, "I just want to play the drums all day." My dad was in the vicinity and said, "Absolutely not in my house." Moms are sneaky. Mom just looked at me and smiled and walked away. And for the next several days, she was in her bedroom on the phone making phone calls talking about me. She was plotting something. She was pulling mommy tricks behind my back. And finally, I confronted her. I said, "What's going on?" And she told me that she found a performing arts high school for me that would actually accept me and allow me to play drums most of the day. I get really emotional when I share about this because it's the first time in my life I felt hope, or maybe a hint of happiness. And I'll never forget going into this performing arts high school. I was the same height that I am now. I'm 5'9". I was like 75 pounds lighter, and I had hair. I had some serious hair. Look at that hair. I miss that hair. I think about it every day. I had sideburns and a goatee. I was cool back in the day. And there I was amongst my fellow artists, and for some oddball reason, my grades went up. With the help of my psychiatrist, my medication went down to 0. No more acting out at home, no more self-harm. And for the first time in my life, people wanted to be my friend. It was weird. Until one day, this teacher yelled at me and spoke down to me. I felt my fists clenched like this. But the cool thing about a performing arts high school is that you have different rooms where you can go practice your instrument. So I stormed out of class and went into a room to go play drums by myself. "Can I play drums for you?" So I sat there on the drums, just doing my thing. Hold on, pause the presentation for a moment. I just got to tell you this. When I started presenting, I actually worked out with my therapist that I would bring this with me. So I could cope if I got emotional, and you all think it's part of the show. It's a win for everybody. So the teacher comes in and says, "You need to be in class." I said, "I know, I'm doing my thing." And he said, 15 minutes, and I played for 15 more minutes, and for the first time in my life, I calmed down. Several months later, I decided I wanted me a girlfriend. And as you might imagine, I mean, some of the women thought I was cool, but most kind of kept their distance from me. And this one girl that I liked was not having it, and I didn't know what to do with my feelings. And so I just went into a room to just go play drums by myself to deal with my emotions. Teacher comes in class, says, "Mike, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing my thing." He said, 15 minutes, but he asked me a question that changed my life forever. He said, "Can I hire you to play drums in my band?" Huh? At that moment, the light bulb went off in my head. When I got upset, when I got anxious, when I got angry, I would usually end up suspended, expelled, or with the police or self-harming. But when I acted out on the drums, people wanted to give me money. So I approached my parents as a high school senior with the conversation no parents of a high school senior want to have when their other child is talking about law school. I said, "Mom and Dad, I want to be a drummer." And their heads just went down like this. I would love to tell you that they supported me. I think they were just okay that I was okay. But here's the deal. Freshman year of college, I finished my first semester of college. All my friends wanted to go out and celebrate. I couldn't go out with my friends because starting at age 18, I was being flown around the country, being paid thousands of dollars to play drums. The career worked, and I became a professional drummer for many years. I got to work in New York City on many different albums, television, and drumming is still my career. In fact, I'm a drummer to this day. Yesterday, I got to do some drumming with the foundation staff. We had some team building, and in my company, I go into the workplace now with grown adults in suits, in the C-suite, and I bring in my drums, we play, they get sweaty, and they hug me and pay me. Like literally, that's my job, like a grown-up kindergartner. And I got to work with groups, like this is me with the Wounded Warrior Project's physical health and wellness team. I got to work with them. And I love that I get to share the medication that helped me with the rest of the world. But I want to be honest with you, I still struggle. I still struggle with mental health challenges every single day. And it's hard because when it comes to mental health, and let's say you and I become friends, I might start to worry, what might happen if you discover that something is a little bit off with me? You might not want to be my friend anymore. Or maybe we're working together, and I feel my anxiety coming up, but I don't want you to tell anyone because I don't want to get fired. I really need this job. So I don't want anyone to know about it at work. Those are some examples of the stigma surrounding mental health. Right now, I'm going to show you how to transform it, and I'm going to show it to you really fast. I want to promise you something. If you really listen to what I have to say, you can actually transform stigma in the next 24 hours in your life. I promise you, you can actually start doing it today. The material I'm about to give you, I've used with a variety of different companies. These are just a few of them. Microsoft, I've gotten to work with 4 times this year on some of this stuff, and people have found it very helpful, very simple, and very practical. But let's start with where stigma comes from, this whole idea of stigma in mental health. We don't want to talk about it. Why don't we want to talk about it? One of the reasons is we as humans don't like things that are confusing, complex, and frustrating. Nope. We don't like to be confused. We really, really don't. Let's take the 2020 pandemic, or just 2020. If you ask somebody, what happened in 2020? I mean, just trying to explain that is confusing, complex, and frustrating. Years ago, I was working out in the gym. I was doing this push-up routine where you put your hands in different positions. I was trying to impress this woman in the gym, I'm not gonna lie. And I ended up hurt my wrist, played it off, left the gym, went home to ice it. I knew it was either a sprain, a strain, or a broken wrist. Mental health doesn't work that way. Most people don't wake up and go, oh, I'm depressed, maybe I should talk to someone today. No, someone typically discovers it for you and has to confront you about your behavior. So it's important to understand one of the reasons we have a tough time with this whole mental health conversation is that it's confusing, complex, and frustrating. The other reason is what I like to call the law of inclusion and exclusion. Let's just say all of us were in kindergarten together. I could totally see that, right? We're in kindergarten on the playground, and you all have Nike sneakers, but I have Reebok sneakers. Chances are, if we're in kindergarten on the playground and you see that I have different sneakers, you're going to call me weird. That's what kids do in kindergarten. We think it's funny. It's so cute. They're calling each other weird. But think about what they're doing. They're figuring out who is in the group and who is not in the group. And we bring that with us through school, into college, into the workplace. Nobody wants to feel like the weird one. So it's important to remember that when it comes to mental health, confusing, complex, and frustrating, nobody wants to feel weird. The next slide that I'm about to show you is the most important slide in the presentation. I want you to watch this very carefully. Stigma is actually a 3-part cycle. It starts with shame. You might feel ashamed about something you're going through, or you might love someone and feel ashamed about their situation. The shame leads to silence. You don't talk about it. Shh, nope, don't talk about it. And the silence leads to sabotage, social injustice, self-destructive behavior, and suicide. Let me say it again. Stigma starts with shame. Shame leads to silence. And silence leads to sabotage, social injustice, self-destructive behavior, and suicide. But we're going to learn how to transform it right now. Let's start with shame. I had to figure out how to transform shame. I first had to figure out what the opposite of shame was. So I had to go to the most reliable resource that I could to figure out what the opposite of shame was, Google. And here's what Google told me. Google told me the opposite of shame is pride and honor. So how do you go from feeling ashamed about your own mental health or someone else's to a place of pride and honor? It's actually a thing called self-care. When you take care of yourself for some oddball reason, you start to feel better about yourself. Self-care is what you do for your health when you're not in the presence of a medical professional. Oftentimes, if you go to Instagram, for instance, and you type in self-care, you get pictures that look like this. People think self-care is this luxurious thing that no one has time for. No, brushing your teeth is a form of self-care. And it's a term we hear a lot. I did an article on Health Central called How to Practice Self-Care without feeling selfish. And I found a statistic that was very interesting. Of people with chronic health conditions, only 5% practice self-care. That's statistically zero, meaning it's a nonsense term we're all telling each other to do, but no one's doing it. It's really important that we start doing it, especially in the world we're in now. And there's a difference between self-care and escape activities. Years ago, I was presenting in Wisconsin. I'm not going to name the name of the organization or the group, but I'm just going to say this. It was 1,500 people at a self-care conference. 1,500 people. I was their keynote speaker. I was super excited to close the event, and I got on stage to speak. And I told these people, I said, ladies and gentlemen, I did the Mike Veny self-care assessment on all of you, and I've got the results. Now, these poor people didn't really get an assessment from me, and they're looking around their tables and confused, saying, well, what was the assessment? Well, it was very simple. 1,500 people at a self-care conference. That morning, before my presentation, I woke up and went to the hotel gym to work out. There were a total of 3 people in the gym. The night before at the bar, there were 300. We got to stop calling escape activities self-care. There's a difference. Escape activities are fine. There's nothing wrong with a bottle of wine or watching Netflix. But when we start calling that self-care, that becomes very problematic. It's really important to be intentional about self-care. Now, I want to give you some self-care that you can all do right now. For those of you that are going to say, well, I'm too busy for self-care. I'm going to give you self-care you can start doing right now. Right now, as you're watching this presentation, I know something about you. I can tell, I can see it from the stage. All of you, oh my gosh, I can see it, have something else on your mind. Me too. That's okay. In fact, you probably have multiple things on your mind. And that's a human thing. In his book, Getting Things Done, author David Allen talks about the fact that we carry open loops on our mind all the time. One of the best ways to manage that is by doing something called a brain dump. A brain dump is when you simply take out a piece of paper and write down everything that's on your mind. It could be the stuff you need to do. It could be the person you're angry at, the ex that you can't stop obsessing about. Whatever it is, put it out there. And you've got paper on your table. If you need to write a brain dump right now, do it for yourself. I challenge you to. It's one of the greatest things that you can do for your self-care. It won't take away your problems. I'd be very wealthy if I could say that. But it would make them more manageable. That's the idea. Brain dump is an activity you can give children. Coaches give it to people. Therapists, very important to do. The other thing that you can do throughout the day is check in with your feelings. There are 3 questions I encourage you to ask yourself. One is, what am I feeling? Oftentimes when I ask myself this question, I don't know the answer. I go, I don't know. By simply asking yourself that question, you start to gain awareness. In fact, as I'm doing this presentation, as you're watching me, ask yourself right now, what am I feeling? Just check in with yourself. The second question, where is it located? There's a book that has taken over the world of mental health called The Body Keeps the Score. It talks about how we store emotions in our physical body. And learning to locate where in your body the emotion is so important. This morning when I woke up, I asked myself, what am I feeling? I was depressed. I was anxious. Where's it located? It was in my stomach for some reason. Just that awareness helped me get out of bed to focus where I needed to start the day today. And the third question, what do I need right now? This is what I call the reparenting question. Maybe you need water. Maybe you need to get off the computer. Maybe you need to get off your phone. Stop watching the news. Whatever it is, asking yourself that. What am I feeling? Where is it located? And what do I need right now? That is self-care you can start doing no matter how busy you are. And I challenge you to start doing this and giving it to others. But I want to talk to you about castles. Got to talk to you about castles. I grew up watching TV, and there were castles all the time on shows. Let me explain to you how the castle situation went down. There's this giant brick building in medieval times. And surrounding the castle was a body of water called a moat. The idea behind the moat was that you couldn't just walk up in the castle. They would have to let the drawbridge down for people to come in. And so let's just say back in the medieval times, I went up to the castle, say, hey, somebody let me in, and somebody would be on the roof and say, who goes there? And I'd say, Mike Veny, I got mental health challenges. And maybe they'll let the door down for me, maybe they won't. But the idea is this, at a castle, they would have to be intentional about who they let the drawbridge down for. They'd have to be intentional about that. There's something that we are letting the drawbridge down for constantly that is really affecting all of our mental health, and that's our mobile devices. Chances are when I'm done with this presentation, one of the first things I'm going to do is pick up my phone and check it. Why? We do that out of cultural habit. One of the things that has stressed people out during this pandemic is social media and the news. And I want to end this once and for all. No one's making you look at social media. In fact, on every social media site, there's an unfriend and unfollow button if you don't like what you see. And for news, no one's making you watch the news all the time. It's important that we develop some better habits around our mobile devices. Very important to do. When you start practicing self-care, you start to feel better about yourself. You transform silence through having the conversation, which is what we're doing. But I want to tell you something that I also know about you right now. I can tell from the stage that all of you have something on your mind that you've never shared with anyone. You've got something you've never shared, a secret you're holding on to. I don't know what it is, but me too. When you've got something on your mind that you've never shared, it can hold you hostage for life. The moment you get to share about it, you get to take your power back. But I'm going to bring up something right now that's very controversial. I wasn't sure that I was going to bring this up, but I'm going to take a risk right now. I'm going to talk about it from the stage. I'm going to bring this subject up. Here goes. There's a restaurant in the United States of America called the Outback Steakhouse. Have you heard about this place? This is controversial. I got to focus and give a presentation. This is very hard for me right now. It's called the Outback Steakhouse, and they got this dish called the bloomin' onion. Have you heard about it? The bloomin' onion. Okay. Let me explain to you what this is, in case you've never seen it. What they do is they take a giant onion, they pierce it, they deep fry it, it comes out, everyone looks at it as it goes through the restaurant, it gets to your table and disappears in like 30 seconds. That thing is so good. Controversial here. But here's the interesting thing. When you look at the image of the bloomin' onion, you see the layers an onion has. Yet, you and I both know an onion has layers. Let me say that again. When you see the image of the bloomin' onion, you can see the layers an onion has. But you and I both know an onion has layers. You see, you and I are no different. We've got layers. There's what you know about yourself and what you don't know about yourself. But there's what you don't know that you didn't realize that you didn't know about yourself. And that's where therapy and counseling come in. People often think therapy and counseling is where you go to when you're in a bad place. No. Therapy and counseling is where you go to for self-discovery. So all of you in this room have an opportunity right now in the world we're in to go to therapy and counseling, whether it's remotely, whether it's in person. It's one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. And for those of you that have been to counseling that are thinking, well, I don't want to have to tell my whole story again, that's usually a sign that you need to tell your whole story again. It's a wonderful thing for your self-growth. But we like to talk about things in this world. We love to run our mouths about different things in this world. But when it comes to mental health, we don't like to talk about it. Can I tell you about an experiment that I did, but I need you to promise that you will not do it. I'll get in trouble. Can you say, I promise? Oh, no. Say it like you mean it. No, seriously, you cannot do this. So there's a term that I have not used up here, mental illness. And sometimes I use it, but I try not to. It makes me feel bad about me. If you want to use it for you, that's fine. I just don't use it. But I tried this experiment that you promised not to do. Years ago, I decided to introduce myself to every single person I met and say, hi, my name is Mike. I'm mentally ill. I just wanted to see what would happen. Now, keep in mind, in my line of work, I live in New York City. I have to negotiate with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I have to be at my professional best. I was the vice president of the Rotary Club of Wall Street. Every person I met. Hi, my name is Mike. I'm mentally ill. I just wanted to see what would happen. That was an interesting year, by the way. Nobody ran from me. I mean, one person got angry and was like, I'm mentally ill too. Why are we talking about this? But I got so many funds raised that year. Oof. I got so much work, and I got hit on by more women than I ever have in my life. No joke. It's not a pickup line, by the way. But the reason it was okay is because I practiced self-care, and I was okay with me. That's why it was okay to say it. I don't like elevators, by the way, especially ones that don't fully stop on the floor. I don't like elevators. And elevators just in general are awkward for conversation. Like, do you say something to someone? And this is weird, right? So I'm on this tiny elevator in New York City, very tiny elevator, and I have fairly wide shoulders, and this woman gets on the elevator. She's next to me, and we're shoulder to shoulder, and it doesn't fully stop on the floor. So I decided to make conversation. I said, hi. She said, hi. I said, this building is sketchy. She said, I work here, sir. I said, oh, what do you do? She said, I'm a therapist. I said, oh, I'm mentally ill. Can I have your business card? You can laugh, but she's been my therapist ever since. We got to normalize this conversation. We have to normalize it. When we talk about it in a low voice, we're the problem. It's not something out there. We've got to normalize this conversation, having the conversation. The way you transform sabotage, social injustice, self-destructive behavior, and suicide is through connection, learning to connect with other people. One of the questions that I often get from people is, how can you tell if someone is struggling with a mental health challenge? How can I tell if my family member is? I'm not sure, or I have a friend. There's something that you can always remember called the 3 outs. Like in baseball, the 3 outs. The first out is out of character. The second out is out of nowhere. And the third out is out of the group. Let's say you're working with someone and they usually show up to meetings on time, but for the past few weeks they've been showing up late. Maybe they're not delivering like they're used to. Maybe you know someone who's not presenting themselves the way you know them to present themselves, their hygiene, their appearance. Chances are they're struggling, out of character. Out of nowhere, someone has a temper tantrum. They start crying. They decide to randomly move across the country. Chances are they're struggling. Out of the group means they're isolating from friends and family. Out of character, out of nowhere, out of the group. But what do you say to someone who's struggling? I love this one because people ask me this one all the time, and truth is, I don't know. I can tell you some things that work about 80% of the time. I'm working with a therapist right now, and he's helping me with some of my content here that I'm doing. And he's got this sign in his studio that says, no advice zone. And I asked him one day, I said, what's up with that sign, this no advice zone? And he said, well, Mike, you're not allowed to give advice in my studio. I said, why? He said, because the moment you give advice, it's never about the other person. It's about hearing yourself give advice. That was a powerful lesson for me. And it reminded me of what's so important when someone is struggling with mental health. The worst thing that you could do is give them advice. Think about what I said to you before. Mental health challenges are confusing, complex, and frustrating. So if you come to me and give me advice when I'm just feeling all this stuff, it's not going to resonate. It's going to put up a wall between you and I, and it's going to make me not want to trust you. But here are 3 things that you can say that often work to get the conversation started. One thing you can say is, how can I support you? But when you say it, pause and let it be really awkward. Like really awkward. The second thing you can say is, help me understand. Pause and let it be really awkward. And the third thing you could say, especially if you're in the workplace and you're working with someone who might be struggling, is what kind of flexibility do you need from me? Pause and let it be awkward. Notice a theme here? Pause and let it be awkward. We don't like awkward conversations. No. We run away from those like the plague. The secret to an effective mental health conversation sometimes is it needs to be as awkward as it possibly can. I need you all to start chasing the awkward conversation. That's one of the greatest things that you can do to help someone else. The other thing that you can do for connection is make it a point to look into people's eyes and see them. This pandemic took away 3 things. It took away the ability to hug someone. It took away the handshake. And it took away the ability to see someone's facial expression. We've had those things since the beginning of time, and they were taken away for a period of time. We need to now connect with people more than ever before. Take a moment to look into someone's eyes and see their humanity. I want to warn you, this is one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do, but one of the greatest gifts that you can give someone else and yourself. I challenge you to start doing that. Of all the things that have helped me in my self-care, this is one of the top 2. Learning to pause, look into someone's eyes and see their humanity. One of the greatest things that you can do. So in summary, stigma starts with shame. Shame leads to silence, and silence leads to sabotage, social injustice, self-destructive behavior, and suicide. The way we transform stigma is we transform shame through self-care. We transform silence through conversation. We transform sabotage, social injustice, self-destructive behavior, and suicide through connection. I want you to think about what you're going to start doing in the next day, next 24 hours, to transform stigma. But back to hamsters. I don't know why I put that slide up there, actually. I just thought it was a cute picture of hamsters. There's no purpose to that slide right there. But I want to let you know that I've actually graduated from hamsters, and I got me a dog. That's my dog, Pippin, right there. And he's in the hotel room, probably trashing the hotel room right now across the street. And I wanted to let you know that, I don't know if many of you during the pandemic had pandemic projects. People had their little pandemic things they did, cooking and all that stuff. My pandemic project was I actually worked very hard to get my company accredited for continuing education. And I'm proud to say that on my birthday, I got to present to foundations this past year. And on that same day, my company got accredited by the largest governing body in the world for continuing education for our programs. So we've got a lot of courses on workplace mental health coming out, and I encourage you to check out my website and learn more about them. One of them is called Ignite, self-care course on the website. But I want to ask you, what's your next step? And I'm going to give you a homework assignment right now. I'd like you to actually find me on LinkedIn and send me a message and let me know what you plan on taking away from this presentation and using in the next 24 hours. Please send me a message. It might take me about a week to get back to you, but I promise I definitely will. Other than that, I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. And you've got an opportunity. You know, when it comes to the giving opportunity that you have, you get to help someone who might be struggling like me and get them the help that they need. You might get to help someone who's struggling worse than me. And some of us are very lucky. We have access to mental health treatment. It's very easy. We can just call our health insurance company, pay it out of pocket, no problem. Some people really can't afford it. This is a real powerful opportunity that we have right now to help the world, and the world needs your help more than ever. So I encourage you to support foundations today. And finally, I want to let you know that I'm on the social media, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. I invite you to connect with me, say hello. I love coming to Wisconsin. It's really nice to be back here, by the way. It's been years. By the way, prior to the pandemic, this was the state that I was coming to the most. And then stupid COVID hits, right? And I'm not here that much anymore, but I'm excited, and I really want to thank Jen Steffen for making this possible for me to come back. But in closing, we're going to take some time for questions if you have any. I encourage you to ask questions because they really help with this content and understanding it. But I want to just end with one thing. The first thing that I said when I stood up today was, for the past 18 months, people throughout the world have experienced anger, grief, and fear at an unprecedented level. Those three emotions we don't like to talk about. In fact, I've heard them referred to as negative emotions. But I want to share a secret with you. And if you took nothing else from this presentation, I want you to take this one thing. It's the most important thing you can take today. And the secret, wow, I wish someone would have given me this secret when I was younger, because I honestly think my mental health journey would have been so much different had I learned this secret. And the secret is this: anger, grief, and fear are three of the absolute best emotions you could ever have. You need them for success in life, and you need to start chasing them. Let me explain to you how. Let's start with fear. I know that many of you, like myself, have experienced a lot of fear in the past 18 months. Fear, when you don't deal with it, becomes anxiety. If you've got anxiety, it's going to make it a lot worse. But when you learn to feel your fear, not run away from it, not make it go away, but feel it fully and talk about it with a mental health professional, fear transforms into vision and courage. We need your fear. You need to start chasing it. And then there's grief. And as I bring up grief, I know that many of you have lost people. My heart goes out to you. I know there's nothing that I can say that can take away your grief. Grief is heavy. Grief lingers. But when you learn to sit with your grief and feel it, not run away from it, just let it be, and talk about it with a mental health professional, over time, grief transforms into joy. But you have to be willing to do the work. And then there's anger, the worst one of all, right? When we think of anger, we think of hostility and violence, but they're different things. Anger is just an emotion. Hostility and violence are its own thing. Anger at its worst is hostility and violence. Anger used to be my demon for many years. I would tell you I have anger management issues. I tried every anger management training in the world, never worked. Anger has become my favorite emotion. In fact, it's become the most useful emotion that I think a human being can have. Anger, when you learn to sit with it and feel it and talk about it with a mental health professional, becomes passion, decisiveness, and successful leadership. Anger, grief, and fear are three of the best emotions you can have. And today, I challenge you to learn to chase them, learn to sit with them as uncomfortable as they are, and learn to work with them. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to me speak. Thank you for making a person who battles mental health challenges feel so comfortable on the stage. And most importantly, thank you for your trust, everyone. I appreciate you being here today. I did it.
Thank you, Mike, just for your vulnerability and your willingness to share your story to smash stigma of mental health. And we're thankful for the just practical ways that we can help ourselves and help others of influence. So thank you very much. We do have a gift for you. This is compliments of Green Bay Packers Give Back. I thought maybe you could walk around New York and say, I'm Mike, I'm a cheesehead. What do you think? So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. The Packers are the only publicly owned NFL franchise, and so we definitely appreciate their support at this event too. So let's give another round of applause for Mike. He's going to be out in the hall here signing books and interacting if anyone would like to meet with him after this event. So. Okay, I'd like to recognize the award recipients one more time, so I ask that they stand at their seats, please. Captain John Balza, Dr. Billy Karinko, Elizabeth Kostichka, Ingrid Parker Hill, and Ruthie Tucker. And thank you all for inspiring us, and I hope for everyone here that these stories inspire all of you to put your ethics into action. So we appreciate that their nominators highlighted their work as well. The nominators here are guests with the ribbons with stars on the badges, and without them, we wouldn't hear these inspiring and important stories. If you are inspired by these stories, please nominate someone for an Ethics in Action Award for 2022. Nomination information is on your program. As we get ready to part, please interact with them and stop by their tables in the concourse just to hear more about the specifics of the work that they've done in our community. This program was made possible by so many sponsors. Our major sponsors are the Aaron's Company, law firm of Conway, Olenichek, and Jerry, Green Bay Packers Give Back, and Paradox. So many supporting and table sponsors have been involved and care about ethics and mental health. All of our sponsors help us create healthier workplaces, schools, and neighborhoods. Before you go, I'd like to introduce Kelly Nutty, who is our Director of Development, to wrap a bow on our celebration today.
Thank you so much. There we go. Yes, I'm Kelly Nutty. I'm the Director of Development, which, yes, ultimately means that I'm going to ask you to give. But giving money really is giving life and transformation to someone that we work with. I will here. I can yell also, but I'll save that for Lambeau Field, the stands. First off, what I want to do is have our therapists and our therapists in training stand and be recognized at their tables. And let's give them a round of applause. Don't be shy, please stand. I work with these wonderful humans every day. In fact, my office is right down a corridor from therapists, so I see them, I grab them for stories. My job is being the nosiest person in the organization. So far this year, they have provided over 10,000 counseling sessions. And by the end of the year, we will be close to 15,000 counseling sessions for our community members. They are working so hard. We are so busy. We are not turning people away because they cannot afford mental health care. Many people have insurance that covers that. Some people don't have any. Some people lost their jobs and their health insurance. Some people are underinsured and they receive Medicare or Medicaid. And we do not turn anyone away because they cannot pay for mental health care. The COVID pandemic has created a situation where 81% of our sessions this year are for un- and underinsured clients. And we will continue to provide. And that, frankly, makes me so happy. I know we're changing lives. So this is such an awesome way to make the world a better place. I hear the stories from our therapists, and there's sorrow and grief and hardship and struggling. But there's also hope and healing and transformation. There's so much joy and positivity that comes out of therapy. And I'm so grateful for Mike's presentation that we need to stop whispering about mental health and we need to start talking about it. Like Julie said, the cost of a session is $165. If you could give $165, that would be amazing. It will be doubled by J.J. Keller Foundation. Give what you can. Please give generously. Know that you can change someone's life today. I appreciate all that you've done to be here. I hope you've had a great morning. We're in a new location. We're in a new time. You know, the pandemic, we decided to change everything. So I'm glad you joined us on this journey today. Please stay to connect. There's still food, there's still coffee. Mike's gonna be out to answer your questions. Please connect with our therapists, and please connect with each other and have an inspiring day. Thank you so much for being here.